Hello, everyone. I'm here with my best friend, Samuel.
Hello.
He's having a fine day.
Fine day.
Quite a fine day. And I just want to let everybody know, if you decide to grow a mustache, you need to get a fine mustache comb. So that way you can keep it comfortable and it doesn't feel like a caterpillar is resting on your upper lip. Today, we're just talking. We're just hanging out, talking about trips we've had. And anything really that affected us like that. Sammy, we haven't shared all of our trips. So, like, we had, 2 trips together, you said? There's the first one, the time we watched Planet of the Apes. And that was basically it. And then you did it other time with somebody else. That sounded like the best one you ever had, was when you ate the stones out in the cornfield.
Oh, yeah, that was the first time I ever tripped off anything. I was on acid.
Was that the best trip ever?
That was one of the most intense trips ever. The best trip I've probably ever had was the one with Devin.
Where was that
at? Can I say names on here?
Devin, yeah, but I wouldn't say his last name.
Okay,
anyway.
no. With him at Shelby's.
Right on.
But that was the time that we went to the forest over on Covered Bridge, and that was when we went into the forest, and it was like Narnia, but as deeper as we got in, and then everything started kind of getting darker, and like everything kind of changed like for like a split second, and it freaked us out.
Everybody had a scary story about that one. Like, I remember Devin having scary stories about mushroom trips. Shelby having scary stories about mushroom trips.
Yeah.
They don't like them so much.
Yeah, I've had one of the worst trips probably that any of us know of.
Which brings me to another point, how important it is to know if you're going to do anything dumb, not even dumb, if you're going to do anything, dangerous or questionable, make sure you know exactly what you're doing. I didn't know anything at the time. I thought, yes, my best friend's going to do mushrooms, right? He's at my house. And it wasn't a good time. Didn't work out. The mushrooms in this case were teeny tiny. They were like, where's the camera? They were like this big.
Yeah.
Each individual one was like this big, and they were like miniature, and the whole bag was filled with probably like 1,000 of them. And if I'd have known more about it at the time, I'd have said, man, those look funky. And the person who sold them to you said to only eat a half gram.
Yeah,
you told us that, and I said that's a fucking bunch of bullshit, obviously. But you guys, basically, you and someone else split it, right? Almost split it.
Yeah, me and my girlfriend at the time. Yeah,
and
who had never tripped ever. So
if you want to know where those can lead, where those kind of bad trips end up, if you don't end up in the hospital, you're not freaking out. 30 minutes into
I think the whole time I freaked out, I didn't say one thing about the hospital, though.
You didn't know?
I knew it was, like, part of the trip, but...
30 minutes in, Sam just wanted to be at home. He just wanted to be at home, and we're like, that's where your parents are, like...
It's definitely a story, for sure.
He's got a long way to go in his trip, and he wants to be the last place anyone wants to go when they're about to do something like that, so... But it worked out in the long run.
It turned into a good trip.
Yeah,
it turned into a crazy trip. Like, it was the most intense trip I've ever had, for sure. The best trip, though, was with Devin and Shelby. And then also, I had a really good trip with Jake and Devin.
That's the one I was talking about. That sounded like the best one, because there wasn't any...
I mean, dude, I've honestly had fucking fun on all the trips. Like, besides...
You told me there was a time you freaked out when you took acid and they all acted like you were Frankenstein, or...
That was the first time I ever tripped off anything. Yeah, and that's one that honestly might be the best actually that I've experienced, because I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I had seen Fear and Loathing and shit, and but I had no idea. I literally thought, like, looking at like this soda or something, that if I was tripping it would just turn into like a fucking night
pink elephant
or something, or like something.
Oh yeah,
like weird, just like movie shit, But yeah, when I did it, it was on 4th of July downtown, and we went downtown Springfield to see the fireworks.
Knows what he's doing.
And it was the first time I'd ever tripped off anything, and it was insane. Yeah, and I took one hit, And then like an hour and a half went by and nothing happened. I remember we were in the drive-thru and I was like, and they were like, if you keep yawning, then you know it's doing something. And I'm like, I am yawning a lot. I said,
runny nose and shit.
And but I was like, I'm not really feeling it. So the dude gave me 2 more hits for free, and dude, yeah, the funny thing is, like, when we were walking into the downtown and shit, you know, there's a million people there. It's the 4th of July, the sun's out and everything, going down, of course, but, like, it's a sunny day and everything, and, everyone there is, like, nice. No one is looking at us. Nothing's happening. Everyone's just mind their own business. But I swear to God, you know, walking out of there, after starting to trip balls as fuck, it seemed like everyone was staring right the fuck at me. It felt like that moot part in The Faculty, where all the kids are like trying to like run out of the school, and all the people, all the kids and shit are all there, and they're all just like looking at them like.
I hear that a lot about acid trips.
That's what happened. Yeah,
I
felt like everyone was like knew
everyone
what the fuck was going on.
And they're looking at you. Yeah, I hear that about acid trips for some reason.
And then
with any trip, I mean, people can sometimes have that mind state, because especially if you know you're doing something wrong and you're wondering if everyone knows, you'll start like.
And I mean, and it went from that to going to this fucking place in the hood for this thing called the Weed Olympics, which was and I'm tripping dick, bro, and like, it was terrible, bro. There was at one point there was a dude that had a gun, and he had his hand on it, and I swear to God, he looked at me. I was staring at him because I was tripping balls and zoning out, and he looked at his friend and said, "I don't like the way this nigga's looking at me," is what he said.
Damn.
Literally his words. And I was just like, uh-oh. And I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I just sat there.
Another weird thing that happens when you're tripping is that
it was weird.
Things that seem like rare will happen to you while you're tripping.
Yeah, like a meth head like hugged me and stuff.
I've had that happen every time I've been tripping, where something that I'm like, this is not because of the trip. There's just some strange event that happened while I was tripping that always makes the trip extra fucked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my first ever mushroom experience was not a good first impression with the drug. I was at a party, and it was a 3-story party in an apartment building. There was a lot of people there. Samuel was there, and we all had gotten these said mushrooms from the DJ, from one of the DJs. Of course, if you're into, the DJ scene, DJs are supposed to have a nowhere to find good things. These looked good if I would have known. I mean, they were white, they had colors all over them, but there was something about them that affected me in a very bad way, where I couldn't think. I could not think except for one thought at a time. My thoughts were just gone. I could only focus on one action at a time. I could find one person, I could do one thing, and I couldn't even explain myself when I was talking to people. I had no visuals. I think it was like $14 worth, and I was just like, that was scary. But later in the night, when we all came back together and we started coming down, we started smiling and giggling and realizing we were around our friends having a good time. It's 8 hours, 6 hours. It can be a long time, even 12 hours. If at the worst, you go through an hour of hell, you at least make it up with like a good solid 5 hours of getting to look at trippy stuff. I didn't get any trippy visuals, or hardly ever.
I did. Every time I've ever tripped, I've had intense visuals. From like low dosage too.
Me and Sam grew up in the same town, went to the same school. We've been hanging out for years.
Best friends since 4th grade.
So, if you ever have a question, is like, what does the mind's effect have on the trips? It could be a big one. It could be a small one. We have a lot of the same taste in music, different stuff. So the fact that we completely different trips and styles and fashions of tripping. So. You and your buddy can trip together doesn't mean you're going to see the same stuff. Doesn't mean that you're going to come out being able to talk to each other about what happened.
I mean, there were definitely things we agreed on during the trip, especially at the party. We both knew when shit was too much, for damn sure.
Yeah.
There were times where, like, that vibe, everyone that was tripping in that place just kind of feel like felt it. But I feel like that happens when you trip. Like, the vibes kind of, like, affect other people's trips.
But the one that really got me...
Obviously, but...
The one that got me hooked was when I had a buddy named Matt, and he had, to this day, the most amazing looking mushrooms I've ever seen. And I didn't know at the time. So he gives us each this eighth, and he gives us each another mushroom as a gift, and the eighths only consisted of 3 mushrooms, and they were like that long with caps and stems whole, and the extra mushroom was just as long. So I'm looking at 4 of these, and they've got to be, I had to have done between 4 and 5 dried grams that night. We're all sitting around. I have a Rice Krispie treat that I folded in half, one of those extra long ones, and I put the mushrooms in it because the woody texture of the mushrooms, I'm one of those people that can't eat mushrooms without something. That's why tea is a super good idea. But that I took a bite and I started chewing, and I said, man, these taste shittier than usual. Whoa. And I looked down, and I had accidentally pulled all of the mushrooms out of the Rice Krispie treat and ate them in the first bite, at least most of them. So I started tripping a lot faster on a different wavelength and everything than everybody. But the visuals I got that night were insane. They were like 3D glasses and moving. It was like everything was breathing, and there were a green or a blue and red version that would come outside each side. They'd all sit on the same base, but there'd be like this see-through translucent form, and they all 3 would be breathing, and the middle one would just be getting skinny, and and everything looks amazing. And I remember at one point there was so much noise and people were talking, there was so much, and I laid on the couch, and I laid with my back facing the couch, and my face facing the back of the couch. My back was away, and the TV's behind me, and Matt and Andrew are behind me talking, and we're all tripping. And this like voice thought comes through my head that's like, what if the answer was right in front of your face? Is what the exact words. And just then there was something on the TV, and these words came through clearly out of everyone's voice in the TV is echoey fucked up. And then one clear thing comes through the TV and says, under your nose. And I'm like, did I just hear that right? Like, this voice just says, what if the answer was right in front of your face? And then out of all of the noise, the TV, I hear one clear sentence on the commercial that says, under your nose. I'm like, what? So these things started happening to me, and I started paying more attention to those kind of videos about speaking to mushrooms. Mushrooms have voices, the things they suggest and everything. That got me on a rampage of research, and Sam's trips didn't do the same thing for him. He was like, that was interesting. We'll wait a while before we do that again.
Yeah, it was... That last trip was fucking gnarly. I felt very exhausted after it was all said and done. I slept really good.
It's not always the right time, not always the right place.
I remember we were watching that Fear and Loathing around the time when me and Hannah wanted to do it. And Hannah had never done it before in her life, and I was supposed to babysit her. And it turned out she kind of babysat me, but I freaked out so fucking bad because then I went to my parents' house, which is just the fucking I don't know why the fuck I had to go there, but I just had to go home, I guess. And I bust through my door. My dad's sitting on a couch watching TV, and I'm just sprint right across the living room, pacing back and forth, freaking out. My dad's just like, turns down the TV. What's wrong? I'm like, Dad, I'm tripping balls right now. And he's like, oh, how long ago did you take them? And I was like, 30 minutes ago. He's like, well, you got a long time to wait now, don't you? And he fucking turned the TV back up. And my mom comes out of the bathroom. Her hair looks like a goddamn, like, seaplant or some shit fucking moving.
Fear and Loathing, watch that movie.
And it had, like, purple, like, hue glow. It looked like purple and pink under, like, water. And lit up and shit. I don't know how to explain it. It looked like something from, like, Shark Tale or something. Downtown, under the sea. And I was just screaming. I'm crying. I mean, and this shit is, like, stuff. And the craziest part about it really was that I couldn't control the howling shit. Like, I mean, I was yelping. I mean, Luke was there. It was a sound that I've still to this day I've never made in my life. Nothing has ever made me that scared of my life.
Put yourself in the situation where you encourage your friend to have this experience, and then he's at your house and he's freaking out so bad that you're in the car trying to cruise, and he's asking you to take him to his home, and you're like, if I do what my friend is asking me to do, it's going to get him in trouble. But you know what? A lot of parents have been through these experiences, and if you approach them honestly, I had a similar moment where I had to talk to my dad while I was tripping, and I thought before I spoke, how long can I act normal before he notices I'm tripping fucking balls? Or should I just come out and say it? And I stood there for a couple seconds. I went, me and my friends ate mushrooms in my room, and I'm tripping fucking balls right now. And my dad, who's not even facing me, says, no way. And it was already cool. So be honest, let it out. It's way better for your anxiety and everything. So
yeah, it was intense, and I'm sitting there crying.
Not with the wrong people. Don't scream it out.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there crying, dude, and I just remember my mom looking at Hannah, and Hannah hadn't said shit. I didn't even know if she was tripping yet. My mom just looks at Hannah, and she's like, if you ever do this again, I'll kill you or something like that. And Hannah just was like, I don't like
Great
this. And dude, Hannah's trip was done after that for the rest of the night. She was like, and she was just fucking being crazy. Like, she could not handle it at all. But my mom was really cool. My mom said, never again. But she tried to turn on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which
what is another good idea?
Didn't really care. And then I watched Beauty and the Beast cartoon, which was insane. That was when my trip started getting better. It was when I started getting distracted by shit. And then SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which if you watch that movie tripping balls, at least in the deep state that I was in, you'll realize that show is dumb as fuck. Like, I love SpongeBob and it's funny, but it was one of those things where I'm like, this show really is making people idiots. You know what I'm saying? Everything they were saying in the show was ooh, it was fucking Sims talk almost. But it was the Patrick SpongeBob, they do that in that movie at some point. The Goofy Goober shit. Dude, that sounds like a goddamn satanic chant.
Watching TV tripping is
cool.
Awesome no matter what is on the TV.
We both have was it a basketball story?
Yeah, we both watched the same, because, what was it?
Well, no, we weren't there at the same time, but we both had a time on tripping where we both were watching a basketball game.
Right.
And both of ours were kind of different, though.
Yeah, I was watching a basketball game replaying at the end of the night, and at this point, my thoughts were all back to normal, but you get this long state if you stay up of just visuals, cool visuals, then you can be sane and enjoy them. And I'm watching this basketball game, and Dirk Nowitzki, it was the game that Dirk scored his record. It was the playoffs of years ago. What was it he made 23 out of 25 baskets or something like that. And it was a playoff game, and I'm watching him run down the court, and he'll just leave his legs behind. His bottom half would just detach from his top half, and his top half would just keep running and dribbling the ball down the court, and then his legs would run up and catch up with him. People would just get cut in half and cut pieces off their body. No blood, nothing scary, just like a doll that just detaches apart and leaves it in space behind them, and then a few moments later it would catch up and attach again, which nothing else around the TV was giving me any hallucinations. It was just the TV, which was a really weird feeling. When you were watching SpongeBob, did you notice around it, or you're just watching the screen? The screen's acting.
The screen itself was weird.
And the basketball game you saw?
The basketball game I saw was weird. That was when I started getting out of the bad trip, and I remember my brother and his friend were there on the couch kind of watching me and Hannah. Because Hannah was just underneath a blanket, fucking freaking. She just crying and shit. And I'm sitting there getting out of it, but I remember being those guys look like popcorn popping. Is what I remember saying. And there was a point where my trip just it switched when I saw this rebound attempt that was happening on the TV, and it was all the dudes trying to catch a shit and they were trying to put it in, but each time the guy was blocking it, and it happened
you said it was broken mirror or something on the screen, so it looked like popcorn pop.
Yeah, and then I started, but the thing was that it was the whole picture was there still, right? It wasn't a fucking shattered glass and it was the same picture in every little piece.
Yeah.
It wasn't a kaleidoscope or something like that. It was like a cracked TV basically, but it was it was doing it as it was going on. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't just a permanent crack in the thing. It was the fucking TV was glitching as shit. It was glitching basically. It looked like a glitch. Where it was and Dirk Nowitzki, half of him is here and half of him's I remember because it was a fucking Dallas versus Boston game, which I think is actually really weird, is because it was a Dallas game. And I remember seeing Dirk was one of the people that I had seen.
Yeah, I remember. Too. That's why I thought it was the same day, because I think we were talking about one of the same games. But
no, it was But that was crazy, yeah. And then Beauty and the Beast was crazy because it was the one that calmed me the fuck down because it was so cool. Like, it literally looked like someone was drawing that shit.
Whenever you were
as
here,
it was going on,
and that
was
like
weird.
the trip the first video that I put out had no sound quality, and it was the one about the mushroom entity. Sam wasn't there for that one, but I mentioned that I had 2 trips prior to that, and the second one, they were only on 1.5 grams, and the second one, Sam was chilling in the room with me for the first few hours, maybe, couple hours of it. It felt like a few hours, but it was only like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And you remember how I was acting those days? You remember or that day that I was tripping, what was happening? Like, if after your experiences, you're kind of deterred from doing mushrooms again. It's only really been because you've been around me that you've been continually interested in having that experience, because it sounds like it helps people, I guess. Yeah. When we watched that Kentucky ayahuasca, I'll put that in the reference videos too. I laughed at it a lot because I just felt like I wouldn't feel comfortable in that situation, but so many people get help from that experience, a lot of it. So, but what was I acting like? Just from the perspective of somebody else while I was tripping that night. You remember? It wasn't that long ago. Just the other night when you were here and I was...
Oh, well, you were really like... You were happy. You cried.
I cried. Not out of sadness.
Not out of sadness, because onions... Because he doesn't like onions.
Because I don't like onions.
That's really what it was. But that's how crazy it was. It was, but it was almost instant. I felt like only like 5 minutes had passed, and it was hilarious because I remember right before that I was talking like, bro, be careful. I don't know what I said, and you're like, man, I've been doing this. I know when they'll kick in. Blah blah blah. And then it was like 5 minutes later, and you're like. I don't even remember what the fuck you started off saying.
It was the second time that I drank the tea.
But it wasn't because it wasn't like you couldn't handle it. It was just like I was surprised how quick it started happening.
Me too.
Yeah, I was just like, that was the thing where it was
20 minutes.
That is weird that it would kick in that.
It was 20 minutes drinking a tea.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's been like an hour and a half for me eating an actual physical mushroom. But if you drink a tea or a way that it gets in your system faster, it was 20 minutes. I'll be sitting there waiting for the trip to kick in and realize I've been tripping for 15 minutes. It's crazy. But
we went on a walk. You walked home by yourself?
Oh yeah, we walked over to Sam's and I walked home, which was fun. A little dark and ominous, but that's part of the adventure. What I remember is I thought I was talking about how my dad wasn't aware completely that I don't like onions after knowing me my whole life. Like, he would still ask me if I liked onions, and I was laughing about it because I remembered when I was a kid my dad being like, I don't like what we're having for dinner, but I was extremely picky, and I didn't believe him. I always thought he was just talking shit. But in that moment, I thought, just as I'm laughing about my dad not knowing that I don't like onions, I realized that it's been my fault ever since I was a little kid, that my interpretation of the world, that no one does anything or eats anything that they don't want to do or likes to eat, was just me. That was just me being a picky asshole. And in that moment, I went from laughing about my dad to crying about realizing that I can now challenge myself to try things that I've been cutting off from myself. It's almost just like subconscious thoughts that are linked to memories that you can't really access, and then one by one it's allowing me to fish them up and all it does is bring it to my conscious mind. So it's up to me to actually change my behavior. It didn't change my behavior, but it did bring it to my attention, which was profound alone, the things that it was bringing to my attention. Enough to make me think, holy shit, this is amazing. At one point, you get older and the feeling of time going by gives you so much anxiety. You feel like you're wasting your time. You don't know what you're doing. And in that moment, it had been so long. I thought it had been 4 or 5 hours, and it had been less than 2 hours. And I'm thinking, Sam, I look at Sam, welled up, and I say, I can't feel how fast time's going by. I can't feel how fast. What a great feeling, right? Yeah, so.
That's fun.
On to my DMT experiences. They, you know what? I might make it a different video since we're at 20 minutes. and we'll talk about all the DMT experiences.
I've never had a DMT experience.
Sam's yet too, but he is willing. Doesn't. What about DMT doesn't seem as rough as mushrooms?
I don't know. I mean, it's just like I've never done it.
Never done it. Yeah, but I mean,
It's just an experience that I feel like shrooms.
When we talk about it, you'd be like, I would do that, but I don't know about mushrooms.
Because I mean, mushrooms is just something that's like traumatized me. I feel like
it can.
Where it's like it's done that, but I feel like DMT. There's just that. It's just that point in my life where I've been okay with being like, if I'm gonna do anything, I'll do DMT because I know for a fact that's gonna change something for better or worse.
Is it because you've heard that the DMT trips only last a few minutes and you're like?
No, it's just because of how intense they are. Like, I want that intenseness, but from most people that I've heard, once you break that wall, it's beautiful, most of the time. And I mean, I've been through fucking hell and back on a shroom trip before. Shit. And that lasted fucking, Jesus, a couple hours. Just the bad part. And it was a rough landing into the good shit that time, too, But no, it's like I feel like DMT is like it's like a transporter to another universe, and I want that.
Well,
where shrooms I feel like is like a like tearing down the curtain of like what reality is here.
They both feel like that, but the DMT is gonna take you for a ride. Mushrooms, because they're so natural and they function with your body in this weird conversation. You get a trip that's very controlled by your imagination. It's affected by your imagination greatly. You can hear things that you imagine, see things that you imagine. On DMT, I specifically had a second where I went, oh, this feels like a mushroom trip. This is all it's gonna be. This is why it's called a trip. And then the lights fucking went out and shit went fucking real. And it was it was out of my control from that point on. I got to react what felt like sanely to everything that happened, but it definitely didn't feel like I had to do much. I just got to sit back and enjoy the ride, so it was a different thing.
Yeah.
But
I do want to try it.
Can best friends have trips and co-pilot? Yes, it can happen. There's records of weird telepathic things happening with people on mushrooms, but can it also be completely 100% different for just two different people who've been in the same place for almost their whole life, listen to the same stuff, watching the same TV shows? Yeah, you can shit your pants, or you can shit your pants of joy with God. Either way, be prepared, and don't be dumb. And, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, for talking with me.
No problem.